Good evening. Welcome to the final session of AX, Artificial Intelligence Expo application. Yes, those days have been incredible. Like in the last 3 days, people were discussing super intelligent stuff about the actual evolution of the application of artificial intelligence in practically every kind of possible activities. But it's Friday night. It's winter, it's dark outside. It's not time to be so clever. It's time to relax a little bit, light the candles, like some people in the screens are doing, or stay in the dark, like some of the people are doing right now, and start a very quiet conversation that is the opposite of preparing something, preparing PowerPoint, if you want to talk the early 2000 language, or prepare a TED Walk and act in it. We're about just to talk about what we are in this right moment, and this is what it is. My name is Carlo Antonelli, I'm the director of AIXA, and I'm the CEO of Fiera Milano Media. Andrea Lissoni is the director of Haus der Kunst in Munich, one of the most important cultural institutions in the world, and is wearing a very impressive white sweater, matching with a white candle. Luca Guadagnino is the acclaimed director of so many movies, including the Academy Award winner Call Me By Your Name, for our category at least, and recently he boomed with a magnificent TV series called We Are Who We Are. And he's wearing another white sweater, and he has a candle too.
I have a violet candle and a violet sweater, but you can't see
me. Sorry, Luca. And in the dark, in the middle of Iceland, in her cabin, Björk is here with us. Hello, Björk.
Hello. Thanks for inviting me to this. It's an adventure.
We know that your laptop is broken, but there are many things around you, and of course I would like to start this not even conversation with you and thinking about presences around us, and the fact that, of course, artificial intelligence and algorithms are becoming part of a very complex coexistence of entities that lives with us together with animal entities, vegetal entities, and many other species. I would like to ask you, where are you and what are the beings, the entities that you perceive all around you right now?
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm literally by a lake, which in my opinion is the most handsome lake in the world. It's a glacier lake that is on the continental crack between the European and the American plateaus. And I'm just seeing the last minute probably of very, very, very dark blue before it goes completely dark here. So it's a very good moment to share with you. Yeah, I think I have very, very gorgeous panorama here too. It's like one lake of each, one mountain, sorry, of each kind all around the lake. One very beautiful round one called Skjaldbreiður, which is the breast of Mother Earth. The Vikings wrote poems about. And one very harsh and aggressive and lava-ish, and one very beautiful, romantic. Yes, basically the most ideal feng shui of a greatest hits of mountain collection, sitting around this gorgeous lake in the mountains.
So, sorry, what artificial entities or intelligence are around you right now?
I could reply this several ways. I think maybe I will go to the title of the talk. So yeah, I think for me, maybe the closest I've been to artificial intelligence conceptually has probably been 10 years ago when I did an app collection, 10 apps to teach kids about musicology. And I got very, very, very excited when I had the first touchscreen. And then I wanted to map out how I experienced musicology, because I was very offended by the two-dimensional musicology I studied as a child. So I started making structured algorithms with math nerds, representing one lightnings, another one pendulums, how they move, and then we went to the moon tides, and one of them was actually a virus, and how a virus multiplies over the enemy. So it was a very quick way to teach kids about musicology. And actually, we went to 10 different cities and studied for a month with each group of kids, schools. And there was kids were learning what they normally would learn in 10 years very quickly, especially the kids who had ADHD or hyperactive, or kids that crave things to be three-dimensional, that have dyslexia and where their third dimension is the highest sensory of them. So yeah, I think when you proposed this adventure and invited me, this was what came up out of this done that could probably be exactly on topic.
It was a beautiful app, by the way. Luca.
Yes. Hello.
Normally and stupidly, the idea of meeting an artificial intelligence is always represented by, let's say, a woman in general, like a pixelized woman or something like this. But it's not only stupid, but it's also reminded me of a common reference, which I think is David Bowie, and one of your basic topic in your world, which is loving the alien.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the question. What's loving? What it is? What does it mean, loving the alien, in your work and in your life?
I don't know if that is necessarily connected to the concept of artificial intelligence.
No, not at all.
But, well, I would say that loving the alien is the possibility of letting the other in their otherness, in a way, cross over your own identity and your own self. So it means to be porous. It means to be able to somehow allow or surrender, actually, not to allow, but surrender to the possibility of a profound otherness. and in the possibility of the otherness to disrupt your world, and in a way to bring new possibilities through the disruption. And in my life, I don't know, my dear. You know me very well, and so I think you could answer.
No, come on.
For me, right?
Better than you, but when you mean what's the best movie that you can think of? What's the cinematic reference for you of this relationship with the other that you were describing?
Well, there are many. I would say probably the great movie by Maurice Pialat, Under the Satan's Sun. It's a movie that challenges our idea of the, let's say, like the boundaries between us and the other. In him portraying a character played by Gérard Depardieu that is absolutely and totally unlikable. Probably another great movie about that is Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence by Nagisa Oshima.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, but many. I mean, all the great movies somehow are bringing that kind of theme at the center of their quest.
Let me ask you a more stupid question. What was like dealing and working and representing teenager in We Are Who We Are for you? Because in a way,
like I believe that I'm not very fascinated and interested in the apology of the youth. I think that is absolutely a topic or a way of addressing youth that I am against, simply because I think that you can find something interesting in different realms of or age groups, let's say. What I like about teenagers, though, is that they are somehow struggling and fighting for their lives every day of their lives, and they don't know why. When you are younger, you feel you are immortal, and when you're older, you cope with the mortality. But when you are a teenager, you see this transformation and you don't know why. This is very dramatic, and so it's very cinematic as well.
Is it true that there's a lot of offer for immortality in this moment, no?
Yeah.
And the offer for immortality, real immortality in this moment, is found by the singularity movement and many other movements, in particular the Californian one. I'm sure that you are thinking about it.
Of immortality? I don't think there is something more depressing and terrifying than being immortal. Unless you are immortal together with the friend you want, which includes all of the people here, the new friends and the old friends. But immortality per se, it's terrible, right?
It's a strong debate in this moment since 20 years, I think, in this kind of enclaves. There is something that I want to tell you. There is another characteristic of this talk. It will disappear. There will be no record. There will be no possibility of finding it again. It will disappear as soon as we will blow the candles, and we will remain in the dark, and it will go on forever. Speaking about mortality.
That's nice.
Beautiful.
Andrea, you like a Benjamin Button. You'll be born 100 years old, and now you finally reach your 50.
Oh dear. Don't say that.
So you're in the best moment of your life.
Hopefully.
And what's gonna happen from this moment onwards? What do you see? I mean, you're looking at everything, and yes, you didn't work with viruses, but you work with bacteria, and you work with the intelligence of bacteria in the past. I take modern with Philippe Parrenaud, and probably between all of us, you are the one who work mostly with the algorithms and artificial intelligence in some of your curatorial works. Am I wrong?
Well, I perhaps yes, you're right. I'm sure that I didn't have the opportunity that Björk had to work so early on application on like developed by Apple back in the days when she worked on biophilia. But for some reasons, I've been following that perspective and that word from the beginning, and I try to understand how that can become a common state rather than a personal, let's say, dangerous or very pleasurable item in our life. And how can I explain better? I'm not very sure, but let's say I would love to hear from Björk whether she has ever connection with the kids that were involved in the musicology learning and what happened 10 years after, because this is somehow the question that I'm driven and obsessed by. I believe that the institutions I've been working with are not at all infrastructure, are not at all buildings, aggregates of human beings that happen to be in the same time in a place throughout time, and they happen to experience something that is unique in that moment and can be carried on and becoming part of a learning curve, let's say in a simple way. Hopefully it's not too complicated. And this can be museums, can be art center, can be whatever, festivals. And to some extent, when I happened to meet with Philippe Parrainot and beginning to develop the idea of an artwork that never ends and never actually begins, and that remembers himself or herself and her past lives, I was deeply fascinated, because that's how I intend cultural and contemporary cultural institutions, like organisms that never forget their past, but also carry on, but are made of emotion and many moments of serendipity. What all that has to do with artificial intelligence, I'm not 100% sure, but I keep my eyes on it as much as I can, and my ears as much as I can, because it is somehow about learning processes and rhythms and forms of being together. I hope it's somehow clear.
Together with who?
Together. I mean, that's the point. I mean, together doesn't have necessarily a complement with whoever, with whomever, with animals, species we are not aware of, people that are no longer there and may be still with us in other forms, and forms of, let's say, pure mineral-driven acting machines, as artificial intelligence can be, you know. So
yeah, I feel it's all, isn't it about instructions? And of course, these instructions can be very rigid and strict, but of course it can also be very poetic, like some of John Cage works, where he gave like a list of things to do.
Mm-hmm.
Or Stockhausen, when he asked the elite of Cologne to go at midnight into the forest in their fancy gala clothes, and then the instructions to the musicians was to hide in the trees and play until somebody would come and walk up to you, and the minute somebody came close to you, you stop playing and run behind another tree and start playing. So this was all night. And in theory, this is the same method as artificial intelligence. It's sort of like a set of rules.
Yeah.
And the gala dress guests, they tore all their dresses and they were very upset. And then they overcame it and were hilarious, ecstatic with joy, and loved it. So it was like a big moment. And I think it's not a new idea. in art, you know, that to have this kind of like these instructions like an AI. I think it's kind of always been there, and it can be very poetic and very inviting, you know. It's yeah.
Andrea, can you work with Ian Chang, right?
Yes.
And maybe not so many people knows the work of Ian Chang and how this kind of artist can use algorithms to create landscape that will never be the same after you've seen it once.
Do you want me to say something about the way
this is just,
Ian Chang? It's very hard to describe the process behind, but in the end, if you want to imagine a Ian Chang work, you have to imagine maybe like imagine a swamp, right? You're looking to a swamp, and your eyes and your ears are not moving as the one of a camera, but they could mimic a camera, and you see forms of life advancing and evolving and encountering forms of other forms of life, striving, surviving, losing, winning, getting together, and being isolated in a world that learns and somehow goes somewhere. The point is, it doesn't necessarily learn to be better. It doesn't necessarily learn to be to evolve. It learns to go somewhere and advance and go somewhere. In one sentence, it's all about habits. And that's what makes the connection and what makes the work of Ian Chang, I guess, so interesting. The habit that we all have, in the end, is an instruction of making something regularly, and how or whether we can change this habit. Let's say an habit can be every day I drink a glass of water, and I didn't drink a glass of water since today, and I will drink a glass of water throughout the next 2 months, and that will stay with me forever. If I introduce this habit in my behavior, something will change, not only in my body, but also in my way of functioning. So the way to reduce the Ian Chang work to specific image is a swamp, and behind the swamp, a score written by someone who could be a very good friend or peer of John Cage, being in love with mushrooms, but also very much aware of forms of friendship, collaboration, and what writing a score can mean.
Luca, this is your thing.
Scoring.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And it's also yours, Björk. Yeah.
Well, I think probably music is, in a way, from my intellectual standpoint, something so mysterious and ungraspable that I really am completely ignorant about, and yet totally drawn toward. That I would say that is my idea of an artificial intelligence. Both the music in itself and the creator of music. It's very mysterious how music, for me, becomes, in a way, becomes as a form, and it's very mysterious the way in which you can communicate. From my perspective, when particularly I use music in my work, what I am intending or what I'm listening in my mind before even I know the music that I'm thinking of. Very difficult, very sophisticated.
Look, I can see that the dark spirits in your room are eating you.
The candle, unfortunately, died.
So maybe it's better to say goodbye before the end.
No, wait.
You want me to leave?
No. I was about to say hello before you were swept away by, dark corridors. Björk. You wanted to say something about scoring, making scores for music, or just thinking about the way I think the use of the instrument that you do, and in particular the way you are in a way obsessed by rhythms, is putting you in a very close position of deal with a very strange entity which is composed by very different pieces that you can control and move like ants, or like bees, or like something that is very close to a biological entity composed by many individual beings. Am I wrong?
Yes, I probably should write a very long essay on rhythm one of these days.
Because I always perceive you like a Disney figure, you know what I mean? Like a Walt Disneyian kind of imagination in your head. I don't know why.
Oh, thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. I mean, I think I've always been very obsessed with rhythms. I mean, just in a more direct way. Even though when I was in punk bands in my teenage years,
we were there.
I managed to be in the band with the magnificent polyrhythmical drummer. And the vocals and the drums kind of took over, and the other instruments were in the back. But so I think I think. But I mean, I could answer this question a million different ways. I'm trying to decide which way to go. Yes, I do spend a lot of time on rhythm for sure. My albums are, each album, maybe it's similar to Luca. Oh, by the way, I watched We Are Who We Are. It's magnificent.
Oh my God, this is great.
How beautiful.
It's magnificent.
How beautiful.
I can't begin to say, sorry, I'm like interrupting everything, but I just have to say it. But I don't know, maybe rhythm for me is similar to location or something, because I maybe because I'm getting quite old and I like to surprise myself, and each album I'm treating myself that each album is a completely new place I've never been in. And of course I always have to deal with my voice, which is very biological and controlled by nature, only one thing. So rhythm for me is just like, oh, now I'm gonna do a rhythm I've never done before, and so it's very and it's sort of like solving a murder mystery for me to try to figure out the rhythms. And I'm actually just in the stage of my album now, my new one, where it's like I'm trying to work out the rhythm, but the rhythm you cannot decide too soon because then you kill something. You cannot decide too late. It's like it has to be some sort of subconscious something territory. I would like to ask you about the environment of your films, Luca. I'm just so blown away. And I Am Love, that's one of my all-time favorite movies. I was just asked by a friend yesterday to name my top 10 films, and it was one of it. You know.
I'm so proud. It means so much to me.
How do you jump between those environments? Is it like rhythms?
Sorry, I lost you for a second.
How do you jump between the environments of each from film to film to film? You think it's similar to different rhythms from album to album to album? Or am I?
I think that I always have been interested in eclecticism, and in a way, I'm interested in filmography. Probably because when I was young, I was teaching myself understanding cinema by reading a lot of monographies of filmmakers that I was interested about. And some of these books in Italy, they were called Il Castoro Cinema because they were edited by Castoro Edizioni. They were mini monographies about Howard Hawks, Fassbinder, and they went and the way they were telling you about the filmmaker was about through their filmography, and mostly these were books about directors that were no more. And so to see the filmography of a filmmaker has always been, in a way, my attitude to understand that from the end what is that someone has left to the world, and the idea of a sort of a big bunch of flowers, if you want to use this metaphor, that could be a collection of your films or the collections of your music, in a way has always interested me. And because I feel I am a little bit of a clown and a showman, I like the idea of impressing people after. So for me, my honest personal mission is to make the perfect filmography, which doesn't mean that it has to be made of great movies. It's just that it has to be made of the forms and shapes and colors that I believe are perfect. That's why, to take your point, I love the idea of jumping from environment to environment, from place to place, from world to world, because in this way, probably I am trying to pick many different forms that could be contributing together to this bunch that will be my filmography. When I'm gonna be dead.
Speaking of this, there is, I think, a very good Italian philosopher living in London called Federico Campagna, who says something that I think is particularly interesting, saying that, of course, we are at the end of an entire civilization. This is not a particularly bad news. There will be many civilizations in human history and in Earth. So this is not a great deal, but our duty at this moment is probably to leave to the next generation a very good memory of what we were, in a way of also faking reality a little bit in order for them to perceive it better than it was. And there are 777 calls in this moment, especially in this really special moment of being good ancestors, of being very concentrated in being good ancestor for the next generation. And this is, I think, what in a way Luca was saying, like it was thinking now, reading biography of the past, to what it will be perceived by the future minds. And maybe this can be also the occasion for making an homage to an incredible human being who recently died in Milan. It's an amazing designer called Enzo Mari, and Enzo left his archive to the county of, let's say, Milan, to the Comune di Milano, but with a clause, and the clause is that it cannot be open in 100 years' time, because only after 100 years human mind will be capable of understanding this kind of way of making projects. So I think it's time for us to gain a different sense of time and work in another direction than being trapped in this hectic, interesting, but also very bizarre, crazy activity that we are into. And this need of changing rhythm, I think, is something that Andrea is working on in this moment. We didn't talk about it, but if I know him very well, I'm sure that this is one of the things he's working on.
Yes. Well, obsessively, but what do you, what can I say that you think makes sense in this dialogue about changing written and written? I ask you, why are you curious?
You have a big institution, you have a huge space.
Mhm.
This space is being submitted to a series of opening and closure
Mhm.
due to the legislation. You have this dead body in a way, it's similar
Mhm.
to a fair, the fair that is part of our company as Fiera Milano Media, and so you're living in this strange, huge animals that is not moving
Mhm.
or is moving very slowly, and you plan activities that are activities that you will do, I think, in 2 or 3 years.
Mhm.
So this gives you a dimension of work that is very different from the rhythm, of course, of the digitality, for instance.
Yes. No, clear. It's. Thank you. Thank you for saying this, because this is one of the, let's say, non-told story of the work that we are doing, that is somehow very modest and very technical, but also very much about observation and something that both Luca and Björk were raising, which is the whole body of work is what makes sense. And it's not about evolution, it's not about involution, it's about transformation. And in the specific case that I'm facing now, I'm somehow planning something that is in the beginning an evolution, and then will be followed by a revolution. So this is somehow the, the timeline I'm working on. Never forgetting one crucial thing, that everyone who enters in a building has been already there beforehand, or if she or he or them has never been there before, that's the first time they encounter it. So this is to me very complicated, because I cannot count on the fact that we are all on the same page. So given that we are never on the same page, that's the bigger challenge. And this is what drives me somehow mad, and what I obsessively try to learn from artists like Björk or by Luca. What does it mean? Some being familiar and at the same time unfamiliar, going new, but actually being yourself, and being loyal to not being loyal to yourself. How to make an example? I was very privileged because I could work in a museum in London at the Tate, where I witnessed people beginning to walk, like making their first steps in the museum, in the Turbine Hall at the Tate. And that literally blew my mind. I say, if a museum is a place where one kid can begin to move his first steps, this will stay with him or with her for the entire life. This is going to be very different from her mother or his mother, and it's going to be different from someone as a tourist that comes in. How the hell I can generate something or contribute to generate something that makes sense for everyone? So it's the answer to me is always written, and forms of written, and generating some regular, let's say, point, some like a beat, like a beat that is always there, somehow hiding, ready to be challenged by multiple voices or multiple rhythms and multiple forms of feeling, I would say, more than experiencing. Practically speaking, of course, we are like going through more than a continental crack. I mean, we are literally in a continental crack, what Björk was mentioning at the very beginning. And I imagine that there will be a release of energy at some stage, relatively soon, like maybe in 6-9 months, that we could already feel in the streets of New York and San Francisco and Los Angeles in the past weeks. Yet there will be the necessity of rebringing into or reinventing a behavior that I hope won't disappear, a habit more than a behavior. So somehow I'm working on slow movements that have to come in, and forms of release and excitement, shared release and excitement. I mean, making exhibition, it's not necessarily a good answer to doing it. So that's why it should feature music, it should feature moment of sharing, it should feature moment of remembering histories and stories, and particularly dealing with forms of storytelling. Again, I think I'm very abstract, but it's, I mean, obsessions are very abstract now, and you cannot really give form to them in simple language.
It's interesting how the the virus is exercising. We're all becoming psychics. We're all just sitting in our rooms, in our apartments, and trying to connect with the rest of the world with clairvoyance. We're going to have like 7 billion people with amazing clairvoyance muscle.
Yes.
And run into the street with this muscle in spring exploding. It'll be a beautiful thing.
Totally.
Björk, do you think, maybe that's what you did your entire life? I really think there is time definitely to go from prose to poetry. I think that if there is something that the COVID times or these quarantine times taught us, is the complete uselessness of any tale in a way or another. So do you think there is something slightly intelligent on what I said, or it was complete stupid thought? Because this is a necessity that I feel all around us: silence and poetry.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I understand. I think we are all kind of just going home and centering ourselves, and I'm just watching people like relatives or friends who maybe are not artists and usually don't have the luxury to do that. I guess in the jobs that we are doing, it sort of comes with the job that if we don't go somewhere and find the center, we have nothing to give, you know. Yes, I would like to basically answer in two ways that are a contradiction to each other.
No problem.
Because I love binary things, but yeah, I would say yes. I think, of course, this is such a huge, monumental, historical thing, the virus, and everybody is home. You know, so of course it has like million layers, and subconscious and subconscious and subconscious, which of course is the only way to get your head around it, is in some very poetic, quiet way. But then if I just oppose everything I just said, I have to say, I have to confess to you, Carlo, I have a problem. When I was a teenage punk, I could not use words. I would just sing and shout like an animal. And now, all these years later, I developed slowly. So now I usually have more words, more notes in each song. So I will have like 7 verses of lyrics and only 5 verses of music. So I'm having actually a problem where my brain is convincing me that prose is more important than poetry, because I think I was introvert as a teenager, and I'm learning to be actually.
So you're on the opposite pursuit.
But I think it's artificial. So I'm just pretending. So I don't know. I actually find it quite comical because. But I think I'm making sense of it now on this album, because I'm sort of not just letting pages and pages and pages and pages of lyrics, just cutting it down and getting it to its essence. And you're actually right. So I contradict myself. The second time, I would like to end my reply with saying that COVID or this Corona quarantine has done the same to me, like probably with everybody else, is all the deadlines have gone out the window. So it has made me, instead of delivering everything half a year ago, I have longer time, so I actually condense it to the next layer and to the next layer. So I'm actually taking the prose out a little bit and hoping the poetry will win.
Thank you. Luca, what is it facing the unknown? Because probably if we have to go back in the conversation to the topic of these 4 days, the idea, of course, that the artificial intelligence machine or whatever will overcome human intelligence, but in general, or reducing or augmenting the quantity of jobs and many other topics. But one topic is the topic, which is, of course, the next 10 days, the next 20 days, and in these times, the unknown. For what I know, you've been an exceptional tamer of uncertainty. Probably of all the people I know, you are the best one to face uncertainty and unknown in an incredible brave way. So how do you face what's going on in the next 2 or 3 years?
Beautiful question.
Luca doesn't think so. You cannot speak anymore. Good.
You should reactivate your microphone.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
I thought that the ghost will finally shut your tongue.
I can only answer in a very personal way, from the perspective of my personality, way of being, heritage. Like on the one hand, because my mother is Algerian, and you know that, Carlo, very well. There is a
I don't want to see her anymore.
Sorry?
I don't want to see her anymore.
But I know you became friends again after many years of feud a few months ago. Why you change your mind? I don't know. Anyway, I think I have a level of fatalism that comes from my mother's religion and upbringing that I feel I'm very happy to have, because at the same time, because I'm a control freak, I like the idea that there is things that you cannot control. So, like the way in which you could somehow say that the unknown, it is to be loved, is because you cannot control it. So you better somehow surrender to it.
What's your horoscope sign?
Mine, Leo.
Can I ask you? Can I tell you Can I read your horoscope of this week?
Depending on who wrote it.
It's a classic, Rob Brezsny.
Okay, a bit hipster for me, but yes, go ahead.
Listen, this is what we have.
I know.
I am my own sanctuary, and I can be reborn as many times as I choose throughout my life. Singer-songwriter Lady Gaga said that, and now offer it to you to use it as your motto. According to my analysis of the astrological omens, it's fabulous time to be your own sanctuary. I invite you to rebirth yourself at least twice between now and the end of November.
Well, if I have to think of myself as my own century, I'm definitely 20th century. I am 20th century. I prefer to be 20th century. I don't know. I don't understand 21st.
So you are. So you're already an ancestor.
Io sono la ragazza del secolo scorso, myself.
Mm-hmm. It's a too long story.
Yeah.
And Andrea.
Yep.
In this moment of which is the most sci-fi moment that we ever lived and expected in our lives. And luckily, we read a lot of science fiction in our teenage years to understand, slightly understand what's going on. I was wondering if there's something you can say about the fact that people lived in rooms like we are living in a room in this right moment, and working alone in a single room the way Bruce Nauman did so many times in his career, making something out of it, especially, of course, in the video works. I'm saying that because Andrea, together with other three curators, has now an exhibition. I don't know if it's visible or not, at Tate Modern, which is a retrospective of some of great Bruce Nauman works. And there is something we can understand and extract for Naumann's attitude towards living, acting, moving, breathing, speaking.
I think for those that do not know the work of Bruce Nauman, it is very much about instructions, and it's very much about resilience, and it's very much about preoccupations, very basic preoccupations that consistently were questioned and transformed in artworks throughout maybe 50 years of research. So the same question come back and back and back in a different form, in a very formal way, but in a very compelling and sometimes uncanny and maybe also out of tune way. What can we learn from his behavior? I can't really say. I can say that being apart, being loyal to yourself and your community, not necessarily living on a platform, not necessarily thinking of selling anything, but like generating forms of transformation or providing forms that can be transformative, knowing that they already transform yourself is the main indication. What does it mean? To some extent, this person has been doing his work his entire life in more or less in the same environment, in a studio, and living the environment outside the studio, which is the mind-blowing landscape of New Mexico, which has been inspiring so many incredible artists, particularly women artists throughout the 20th century, like Agnes Martin, for instance, or Georgia O'Keeffe. Never transpires, never enters his work. So his work is, to some extent, completely mental. Yet he is part of a community outside. He's part of people that are dressing his horses, that are working with him, and they are like generously part of the world he is trying to build. I don't know how to frame it differently, but he allowed himself to be transformed by his obsession for living and working. Also failing very often, failing in delivering, failing in respecting deadlines, failing in being in following the dictatorship, let's call it as such, of the rules of the art worlds, but being incredibly loyal to himself. And that's something that one can learn, I guess. But again, it's very abstract. The show is on at the Tate now, and it's seen by mice, I would say, because the Tate is closed, and the only inhabitants I'm very familiar with, having spent so much time at night into the Tate in the past, is some beautiful, silent, and very fast creatures that one can see running from one end to the other of the wall. So it's also nice that such an interesting world is seen by non-human beings. No, I think it makes sense in this moment also. It's like a machine.
But I think the mice are very, very, very important as an audience. So don't underestimate them.
No.
You know.
Yes.
I have a question for Björk.
Mhm.
Andrea,
Yes.
it's time for you to go to bed. Blow the candle.
Okay.
I have a question for you. Björk, what do you think of this word of Lea Vergine, the great architect who recently died? By the way, she was the wife of Enzo Mari. I had to have a lot of courage, and only who's very afraid of life can. Sorry. This means can have the courage. Do you think fear can help us moving forward, or it freezes us? We're getting very psychological.
Yes.
Sorry, I mean, it was very bad. My reading was awful. I cannot see anything, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, my mind goes very quickly to yoga. Obviously, being a singer, my body is my instrument, so I have to take care of it. So I do a lot of yoga, and I breathe a lot, and do Kundalini yoga, which is the one with the most hyperventilation is the key to everything. And there is a lot of talk about it, is that fear is excitement without the breath. So when I start panicking, I think about this a lot, and just it's basically, yeah, it's enthusiasm. Sorry, I'm misquoting. Fear is enthusiasm, but without the breath. So I think if you include the breath into fear, this is a very singer answer. I'm very sorry. It's very functional, but it's also very existential. It's how to cope with fear. You know, there is like you can breathe into your stomach, which is more blue, and when your lungs is more red, and this is something, you know, when you do a show, it takes an hour and a half, 2 hours, and you are thinking about this the whole time, and there is this like everybody knows, I'm sure all of you guys have some of it in your work, if it's opening an exhibition, Andrea, or filming, Luca, or the things you do, Carlo, but it's this kind of like living with getting that perfect dose of adrenaline, not too much, not too little, and then surfing it to the heights. You know, you don't want to live without it. You know, but you know, if you are really, really calm before a concert, it's going to be a horrible concert. But of course, it's you know, I sorry, it's like every single question always goes back to Corona. I'm sorry, it's a bit one track mind. But yeah, I think it's definitely something that artists or musicians have to learn very, very early. Is to learn. You cannot plan things, you know. It's one of the first things you learn in your teenage years. So I think the sort of fear of the unknown is just like something you learn to live with, and I think maybe that's why when we had the bank crash 10 years ago in Iceland, there was this huge philosophical, conceptual debate. And in a way, my album called Biophilia came kind of out of a lot of huge talks and what to do with unemployed people, and can we exchange it was a collaboration with the university and the city and the artists, and nobody paid each other, and it was just an exchange because everybody were broke. And so in a way we confronted that fear with some sort of project that was all about not putting any outside fuel into something, or that it could we could coexist as a unity on some sort of synergy. And in that situation, it was kind of the broke musicians and broke authors who write literature in Iceland who ended up actually having the most usual functional lectures of how to confront fear and how to just learn how to live with it. And I wouldn't be surprised if the coronavirus would come up with something similar. Was that too long answer? Sorry.
No, it was just beautiful.
Okay.
And we are all in the dark.
Yes.
Luke has been clearly finally sucked away by the dark mothers.
And yet,
you're still there. You're fighting like Dakota.
I'm here.
Andreas clearly vaporized.
He did.
We're all fearing, confronting the fear of unknown.
Yeah, we're just relaxing, so we can stay here for hours. But most of all, I would like to thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Björk. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Carlo.
Thanks to everybody. Thanks, Andrea. Thanks, Luca. Thanks, Björk. It was a magnificent presence. And the audio presence was like a genius idea. And let's leave it to our future people.
Thank you, Andrea, Carlo, and Luca. And it's wonderful to witness your friendship. I'm honored to be a witness to it. Thank you.
We're honored, same as you and more than you. And see you next year with the X, with Artificial Intelligence Expo application, with more uncanny moments.
Yes.
Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.